alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a new guest to the show, Anna J Walner. Welcome to the podcast. Jeez, I almost did that thing where you say "prodcast," which is not what the show is. I've heard other esteemed podcasters have made this mistake before, and I have now fallen into it as well. Anyway, welcome to the show, Anna.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm Anna J Walner. I am the author of the Allure Legacy series. It is a young adult paranormal romance series. Garkain is the first book in the series, which just released in June, and Larugo is the second, which will be releasing in November and available for pre-order now.
Wonderful, wonderful. And it's funny because actually I Googled, I searched Garkain because that's the only word I had on your books to start with.
Right.
And I got all these results for weird creatures and stuff from mythology. So I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. I love myself some creatures, you know. My old podcast was called The Mooks and Monsters, and I was the monster half. Anyway, that's a bit of lore there for the long-time listeners, maybe. We'll get that. But anyway, Anna, we were talking a little bit in the pre-show about a certain movie that could we describe you as a fan of Donnie Darko? Could I do that?
Oh, I absolutely love Donnie Darko. Obsessed with it. I've seen it at least 10 times, and every time I rewatch it, I discover something that is surprising to me that makes me rethink the entire movie and then makes me want to watch it again. So, fantastic movie. I have the entire rabbit suit, Frank the Rabbit, in there, hidden away because it terrifies my 2-year-old.
Well, yes.
But
it would.
Big fan. Big fan.
Yeah, but when it comes to rewatching or rereading things, honestly, the re-experiencing stories, I've actually done this a few times lately, and I've had more urges to do it lately than in a long time. For a long time, I would only watch a movie once, for maybe 5 or 10 years. I'd watch a movie once, and I'd be like, okay, I can't watch that again. I watched it. It's done. But lately, it's especially happening with these kind of meta writer movies that goes to show where my head's always at. Was it Adaptation with Nicolas Cage?
Yeah.
That's a great movie. I thought that was a great movie. Anyway, it's a very weird movie. It's not as weird as Donnie Darko, but it's this interesting. And then there's also and then I watched Stranger Than Fiction again with Will Ferrell. And that's actually, I realized this movie is a reverse. It's the inverted version of Adaptation, which is very strange when you think about it. There's so many parallels between these movies, but one is about a writer trying to basically find his character and find what his story's about. That's Adaptation. And the other one's about a character trying to find the author that's writing about them. And stop her, I guess.
I love finding those movies that are so outside what you typically see now, that are unique and thought-provoking. Mm-hmm. Those are the movies that resonate and stick with me, and those are the ones that I want to rewatch in the same way that I want to reread books like that defy my expectations and are nothing like what I thought they would originally be like. Especially when they end on an entirely different note that makes you see the book in a completely different light. Mm-hmm. And then you have to go back and reread the book to see, how did I miss this? And that's kind of what I tried to do with Garkain, just to let you know.
Nice. Actually, I'm editing a book right now. It'll probably be out in a couple weeks because I'm an indie author. I'm almost done with it.
Awesome.
And it's very strange. I'm just like, wow, I need to make sure that works in this book. Like, I know the ending does have a bit of a twist to it. I mean, it's a fantasy novel. It's called Temple Theater, The Forgotten Mask. First book of the Temple Theater series. I always conceive of that as a series first, though. But anyway, it's enough about that. People will be able to read it soon, so that's cool. But about your books, let's get back to that. Because you've got a young adult series, and if I'm not mistaken, it features, supernatural creatures in the modern world, more or less, right?
It does. It's a blend of urban fantasy, but it's done in a very intelligent way. So the theory behind both Garkain and Larugo, which Garkain is an Aboriginal term for something that is the closest thing I could find to the description of a vampire. It is a bat that lives in the trees and comes down to enclose its victims in its wings at nighttime. And so I wanted to present it in a very educational way. So there's a bit of science looped in there as well. I took the theory that as all species evolve over time, and especially when presented with different challenges and in a different environment, how too would perhaps vampires and lycanthrope change over time? Because what we know of them is the stories of old that have persisted over time. But what if that were not the case any longer?
Yeah, like horses or dogs or cats, maybe even cats. I don't know about cats. But you know how human interaction changes the animals much faster than evolution would in some cases.
Very true. And also the blending of different genetics from a completely different land. So the story is set in Australia, partly because of my adoption story. I do know that my biological father is Australian, so I've always had a fondness for the country and for the Aboriginal culture. And Uluru is the Aboriginal term for what we know here in America as Ayers Rock.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, I have a hard time remembering the pronunciation. I've never been to Ayers Rock or Uluru, but I have heard it in songs and stuff because I went to Australia when I was a kid a couple times. Visited there because my dad was a professor and he was teaching astronomy of the southern skies. So we went there for a month each time, and it's a very weird. It's an interesting country. Too hot for me, frankly, but whatever. So is this country now. Anyway,
I'm from Texas, so I don't think the heat would bother me too much.
You'd be okay. Yeah, you'd be okay. I'm from Minnesota, of course. It's not the same. It's a lot different. Let me put it that way. But right. Especially when because we went there in January. This is just a side thing, and so January, of course, in Minnesota, super cold. January exactly. January, it's summertime in Australia. It's pretty jarring to go straight from we were celebrating Christmas. It's cold out, and now I'm in Australia and I'm burning up. Just when I needed the relief too. Basically, I just wanted to settle in for a nice, bitter, dark winter, and instead it's summertime and all the kids are running around. Anyway, sorry about that. But no, Australia is a fascinating country, and there's a lot of strange creatures there in the real world. I mean, in our world as it is.
Indeed.
So of course I can imagine, and honestly, your description of the Garkain, it just encloses the victim the way you just described it, is really evocative. It is making me have the best possible creature thoughts. I love those kind of things. Well, it carries them off, I assume.
Well, that is just the term, and the vampires in this series are really very. They're written in a way. Both the vampires and lycanthrope in the Allure Legacy series are meant to be presented in a way that are believable, as if these characters could really exist and be your neighbors or be walking down the street, and you would never know. One of the taglines is "We're all around you," and nice. So we're not who you think we are.
Okay, so we're not talking to giant bat monsters necessarily. No. Okay, well, as much as I love giant bat monsters, I'll give you a pass on that one.
I'm sorry to disappoint.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's more what you'd expect in the sense of there has to be a secret world, giant bat monsters living in the bush. Yes. That's one thing, but they can't really hide among people very well unless they transform into bats, like a werewolf, like a werebat or something. I don't know. Right. Could happen.
But I also thought, where is, not only do I have ties to my Australian heritage, but if a secret society were to exist anywhere, I think that the outback of Australia would be a wonderful place to put that. So that is where the colony is. And I cannot confirm nor deny whether or not it does actually exist.
You heard it here first, folks. If Australia is real, this colony is definitely real. I mean, that's just the running joke in the old writing group of mine.
Right.
But anyway, because we have an Australian member in my writing group, and he's like, "Yeah, you're just a crisis actor, right? You just live down. You don't really live there. It's the bottom of the world. You'd fall off." Anyway, but that's another random joke. Sorry, keep diverging. But anyway, no, your books sound fascinating, and I do like the scientific approach to supernatural creatures or creatures that are traditionally supernatural, because I always, I mean, to put things in perspective, like I was the kid who was raised Catholic. Was like, well, those miracles don't really make any sense. How'd that ever happen? I read the Bible a bunch of times, and I'm like, well, why is that obviously doesn't happen anymore. I've never seen one of those. So you can assume they no longer happen or something or whatever. And, so even when I was like 6, I was doing this kind of nonsense, Catholic school didn't like me very much. But anyway, my point is that sometimes I am also autistic. I have a hard time understanding the kind of things like it is almost like a joke. Mythology is kind of like a joke in that I can't understand it except in a literal way. At least initially, my reaction is always literal with a joke, almost always literal with mythology. So that's the issue I have with any of that. But that's one of the reasons I like my overt creatures so much.
Well, it's a great way to blend, especially whenever you're dealing with urban fantasy. So there needs to be a little bit of an element of truth. And I find that whenever you're writing from a fantasy point of view, especially incorporating creatures like vampires and lycanthropes, that adding a bit of science in with the narrative can help to bring these characters and these beings to life in a way that is believable, because it adds a level of believability whenever you have actual hard scientific facts thrown in there with it, as well as it's very historically researched as well. So the history of Australia.
Yes. And Australian history is as rich as any other colonial settlement, honestly. I mean, it's a place that a lot of us in America don't know a whole lot about, though.
Right.
Yeah, beyond the whole prisoner thing, you send them to Van Diemen's Land or whatever. Like the U2 song. Anyway, I think that was isn't that what they call Australia? I don't remember. I think it was. It was one of the nicknames for Australia, or the names they called it back in the day.
In 1788, it was colonized and called New Holland.
Oh, New Holland. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe Van Diemen's Land is another colony. I might be getting mixed up.
So I thought that would be the perfect opportunity, given the hysteria in Europe at that time, for certain supernatural beings to find a means of escaping that situation and forming a tentative truce for the sake of survival.
Oh, that is awesome. I love that. And that gives us a grounding. Yeah, exactly. Grounding, both political and social, for historical kind of supernatural being thing. Supernatural colony.
There is a little bit of a social undertone there, and with the two different societies who traditionally are known to be enemies, vampires and lycanthrope, who are thrown together and have had to forge this peace, and who find that it's actually beneficial to the colony for them to coexist in a harmonious way. So there's kind of a bit of a social and cultural undertone in that as well. Readers may pick up on in the second book. It's more prevalent.
Okay. Yeah. When you write a sequel, what kind of steps do you really take to deepen that setting, or do you focus more on the plot and the characters and continue to do that? Because I kind of need to do all those things because I like my fantasy and I like my world so much. But what's your preference there? Yeah.
Well, in the first novel, so in Garkain, I really focused on the character development, because Amelia is me, essentially. I gave her my adoption story. She was adopted from Houston Hospital, as was I, and went on a quest to search out her biological heritage, which I myself did as well, taking the DNA test and finding and reconnecting with my biological family in the same way that Amelia did. So the story in the first book really focuses on the characters that will continue through the series. And so the readers get invested in the characters. And then in the second book, once we have that foundation of characters, then we start to expound on the world and more of the political side of things and the social contexts and the love story that is in there as well.
Excellent. So, yeah, I mean, I know I always, I kind of like to go big in the middle of a book too. Not the second book, in the middle of in the middle of any book. I like to go kind of big. Do you have any kind of structural tricks you use in your novels like that?
I'm a plantser, so I am I'm a mix between a plotter and a pantser. Mm-hmm. So I know where I want to end up, and I know what key points within the novel, which book I want to hit. And so readers can expect some surprises along the way because I hit those benchmarks. But how I get there is entirely up to the character. So sometimes they will take me in a completely different direction than what I had originally intended. And it can be surprising in a good way. Some of the secondary characters become primary characters later on because of just how it came about as I was writing.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I didn't mean to give you a false impression of my process, because actually I'm a pantser as well. Where I call myself a discovery writer, but it's the same thing because I just noticed there's some things I like to do, including the giant like encounter in the middle of the book, which kind of a set piece of some kind that reestablishes what's going on in a way. It recontextualizes what's going on, and then I can do it again at the end because it just keeps me from getting bored. That's one of the reasons that tends to happen in my books. Yeah. Anyway.
Right. No, it's exciting being a planter. So whenever you're in that pantsing stage and you're writing and you're letting the creativity flow, I call it riding the creative wave. It's exciting for me as an author, and I hope that comes across on the page because it's I'm just as enthralled with where the story is going as the readers are. At least that's the hope.
Absolutely, and to maintain that while you do the edits too is very important. I've found. What do you think about that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, anything you want to expand on there, I guess?
Editing, I used to loathe. And it was one of the most laborious and time-consuming processes. It still is, but I've come to see it now as more of an opportunity to flesh things out. And having beta readers and hearing their feedback really does help to go back and kind of, clarify something. So a lot of times I'll get feedback and say, I didn't really quite understand what you were trying to get at here until later. So I can go back and make those edits. So it really is a chance to make the book the best that it can be. And sometimes I find the opportunity to throw in some additional little surprises for readers.
Yeah, punching stuff up is also, I think, underrated as an activity in editing. Where you take something it's just pretty good, but then you boom, let's push that to the roof and make it even better, make it even cooler, even more of what it is currently. This action scene can be more intense. This this romance scene can be more suspenseful or intensive or whatever it is you do with whenever given moment. Make it more of what it is. The tension can be higher here. Any of that stuff. That I find that, I mean, maybe it's just because I've been editing all day and it's rubbing off. There's an artifact in this podcast, and it's just like, oh yeah, I've been editing. I edited 25,000 words a day. Of course, I'm intensely involved in editing right now, and that means I listen to them all out loud because I had the computer read them to me, and that's really handy. Some of them I listened to a few times because I fell behind.
I will also say that sending yourself, if you have a tablet, sending yourself the PDF and being able to read it on PDF on your tablet and then mark it up as you go using the pen, because I have an iPad and an iPencil. And so I will read through and catch things while I'm reading from a reader's perspective instead of reading it, the manuscript on the computer. It's a completely different experience for me. And it does sometimes change how, I will go back and maybe restructure some things. I also speak my dialogue out loud at night while my daughter is asleep. So to see if it makes sense. So if these two characters if the dialogue is believable. And sometimes I use accents. So, that just entertains me.
Yeah. No, I mean, mostly it's kind of funny because I think most authors would rather read their book out loud than what I do, which is I have this really kind of grating robot voice read it all to me. And I've grown to really like that grating robot voice because it tells me I'm doing a good job most of the time lately anyway. But it's like, oh yeah, this is actually pretty good. Especially since I switched from dictation, which was, gobbledygook for a while there, to typing again, which I'm much better at. It comes out really clean now. And I'm like, oh, this is great. This feels way better. And and also, I guess I can't give it the illusion. Like, it's harder for me to fake, like, this is good. Like, if it's bad, it's bad. It stands out to me. I'm not saying, obviously, each to their own, but, like, I find, and also, that way I catch all the narration stuff, too. I mean, it's kind of an incredible thing. And there's lots of nice free programs that'll read your book in a grating robot voice, if that's your thing.
Right. Right.
Anyway, yeah.
Or you can record your own audiobook, which I did for the first. I did. I took on that monumental task at night, and I will never do it again. I will outsource that for the second book, should I decide to do it. But it was quite the laborious process, and but I'm glad I did it to know that I don't want to do it again.
And what was worse, the actual recording or the production?
Post-production, wow. The actual recording, because your voice gets tired, you have to enunciate very clearly into the mic, and your mouth gets quite tired. The muscles in your mouth and your lips get very tired, and so it takes probably about a good hour and a half to 2 hours for one chapter. And then you have to go back in your audio program and do all of that. So it took forever for me to get it done.
Yeah, and I'm not making an announcement here, but I may have a certain audio product coming out sometime soon. But it won't be in a full audiobook. It'll probably be a series or a podcast that you'll be able to get over at Buy Me a Coffee. But more on that later. I mean, because I'm really, really considering doing some audio production that doesn't have to go to Audible. Because Audible has very strict requirements that I don't know if I can meet, and I'd rather not have to contend with that.
Now, I will go ahead and share something with you then.
Sure.
Find Away Voices. Mm-hmm. So Find Away Voices will allow you to upload your audiobook, and they are a distributor. They're an aggregator. So they will actually, in the same way that Draft to Digital or Ingram Spark will aggregate and distribute your manuscript in the physical and the ebook version. Find Away Voices will do the same for your audiobook. And Absolutely. They will put it through Audible and onto iBooks and to Google Play. So if that's something that you're interested in.
I may be. I'm actually more worried about the sound quality requirements for that as well, though. Because they're probably similar to Audible's, and I'd be nervous to not meet those.
Mine passed Audible's requirements, so I would have to say that I used Adobe Audition.
Okay.
So it does require you to know a little bit about your frequency and your hertz. So it does require...
I can learn. I'll pick it up. I mean, audio production for this podcast is really easy. But yeah, right. Anyway, that's...
We've segued a bit.
We have. We've wandered a little bit. That's normal for this show. And, I mean, definitely, I think people who are listening to a podcast, I mean, I've been listening to a lot of YouTube cuts of audiobooks lately. I mean, specifically Paul Cooley, who was my guest last week. Paul E. Cooley has this series where he's got his whole audiobook professionally produced, and then he split it up into little 15-minute episodes, and they're out on YouTube with little visualizations going with them because it's a sci-fi book, so you just got, like, stars and shit in the background.
That's neat. It's
pretty cool. I mean, because he does a podcast every week of each of it that's an ongoing story of his, which is pretty amazing. And a big inspiration for me, obviously. He is kind of him and the rest of the podcasts he hosted about writing, the Dead Robot Society. That's one of my pod fathers, right? I mean, the pod parents. Anyway, so yeah. Anyway, I have rambled a lot. Sorry about that, Anna. This is a show that's not always most professional, but normally I try to stay on topic. So, but yeah, doing your own audiobook, that's incredible. It sounds like like you said, a lot of work.
Right.
And again, I'm not sure about how much time I'm going to want to spend in production. But if it works, it works. If I can get it on, find a way, that'd be great.
Yeah, and you have to cut the air conditioner off. You have to sit in the closet and close the door. So it really is it's a time commitment. And so, yeah, as I said, it was a learning experience. Probably, no, it is not something that I will do again myself.
Yeah, if it's anything like the sauna I'm going to experience if I stepped into my closet, I can imagine not trying to do that again. Anyway, so Anna J Walner, welcome. Thanks for being on the podcast. It's been a lot of fun, and the time flies. It indeed has flown fast. But there's one last segment that I have for you. If you have time to read books, do you still read books? I guess for the first question. Other people's books. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. It does depend. So I'm really, I have Verity on my iPad right now that is in waiting. I have Recursion by Blake Crouch that I am, oh God, I love Dark Matter.
Oh, yes. That was the only one I've actually read of his, and I loved it. Yeah.
Blew my freaking mind. And and I've heard that Recursion is better. So, but while I'm working on a project, whether it's editing or whether I am in the midst of writing the manuscript itself, I don't tend to read because I'm solely focused on my own voice and my own narrative, that I don't want to accidentally have anything influence that. So I sort of keep myself, occupied with just my own stuff.
Well, great.
But I do also read when I have the opportunity to.
Wonderful. And you already gave us a pretty good couple recommendations there, because Recursion, Blake Crouch, that's a quality thriller and sci-fi author there.
Oh, yeah.
And as for me, I think I mentioned this recently, but I've been reading this book called Unsold for a while now, but I'm finally making some real progress, and it's by Will White. And he's an indie author, but this series is... at first I'm like, okay, this is pretty okay, whatever, kind of Avatar: The Last Airbender inspired fantasy thing. And then I'm like, wow, this is actually way different than what I was expecting, and it's gotten way higher scale, crazier stuff is happening than I expected. And I'm only halfway through the first book, and there's 8 more on my Kindle. So, yeah.
I love Blake Crouch because he really makes you think. I mean, it really is thought-provoking. So I really tend to gravitate towards those kinds of novels that stretch the bounds of imagination and what we think is possible and really make me think.
Yes. Yeah, that's one of the things I loved about Dark Matter, other than it boils down. That story is really, really intensely interesting, because even though it can be boiled down to basically being like, it's like a serious Rick and Morty, but it's also like, it's just really, it's emotional, and it's got this kind of quality to it that is extremely lifelike. That's one of the things I really liked about it. It felt very almost domestic, and I almost couldn't believe it was a thriller. Like, wow, when was the last thriller? When did I last read a thriller before this? Like, this is kind of funny how it really changed my expectations about a third of the way through the book, and it just kept changing them. Yeah,
it's an amazing book, and so yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting the time to read Recursion. Hopefully, I'll get a break here soon, and I'll be able to delve into that.
Yeah, here's hoping, and fingers crossed for you. So, Anna, tell people where they can find your works and your stuff when it comes out.
Everywhere. So I'm widely distributed. All ebook distributors, anywhere you can buy a physical copy of a book, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, the two big ones, or discount books, Books A Million, anywhere that books are sold, even Walmart. So
Awesome.
There you go.
Go check out Garkain, folks. Go find that. Especially if you're a YA reader, you could, get to read more, potentially.
And I've had a lot of adults that have reached out to me and have really enjoyed the book as well.
Awesome. So for many audiences, broad audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And thanks for listening, everybody. This has been great. Thanks so much, Anna. And as for this podcast, you can find more of us at mentalcellarpublications.com, and at least for now, timneaderwriter.com. Those are the best places to look. You can find my books there. I've actually recently revamped timneaderwriter.com, so it should make more sense to people dropping by. And if you go to timneaderwriter.com/books, you can find all the books I have currently available, mostly with their current covers. But, when you make your own covers, things get pretty complicated, and you change things too much. Anyway, that's me. Thanks for listening, everybody. And stay safe out there. We'll talk to you next week once I can stop the recording by turning my mouse back on. Thank you, everybody. Have a good week.
That tears it.